Hi, everyone. Hello. Welcome to the Signal Hour. I am Chris Martenson of Peak Prosperity, your host. And of course, at Signal Hour, what we do is we're trying to find the signal within the signal. A lot of times today, the signal happens to be X, but I read very widely. I read all major newspapers, so I know at least what the propaganda is. I have to confess, I don't watch a lot of TV, and I probably should, just so I could understand what the propaganda actually is. And of course, X is the true signal right now for me mainly. But I read a lot of Substacks. I consume a lot of podcasts. I try and synthesize that all down here. So, wow, I am an information scout, and I am an absolute fire hydrant consumer of this stuff. And I'm having a hard time keeping up. So much stuff is happening. So good to be with you here today. This is live, of course. I am reading the comments over to the side. If you see my eyes, look over there. I'm scanning comments, and of course, I'll bring those in as appropriate. Right now, we're going to be discussing the Trump revolution. It's really ongoing, and it's been quite a thing to behold. Listen, my hypothesis, this is an actual revolution. Trump was up against the deep state, first term. They came after him hard, did everything. Russiagate, fake this, fake that, lawfare, even up to and including an assassination attempt. Obviously, he came in loaded for bear this time. And what we are seeing is nothing less than the complete dismantling of, well, an attempt at the complete dismantling of the deep state. And oh, is it swampy? We're going to be discussing that today. USAID. We're going to be talking about what the FBI has been up to. We're going to be talking about what this could really mean. And by the way, huge impacts off of this stuff for everyone. And really, please pay attention. This is one of these times when decades happen during weeks. That's what we're seeing. Let's begin here. It turns out that we see here, boy, does this ever look like an astroturfed crowd. This is so these are people who allegedly showed up outside of the USAID offices to protest Elon Musk. You can see deport Musk. They're really mad. They're really mad. But let's take a look at this together and see if you notice what I noticed. Oh, too loud. Hold on. Too loud for my ears. Give me 1 second. I'll adjust the audio on that. Pull that back on down here. All right. Let's see what happens now. What? Let's look at this one more time together, but I want to see if you notice what I notice. Okay. All right. This is quite remarkable to me because, well, here's what I noticed. If these are lefties, where are all the minorities? I thought this was an anti-racist crowd. It kind of reminds me of this. Like, you got campaigns when the Democrats, when they're campaigning, look behind Kamala there. I've circled. They're very diverse when they're on the campaign trail, but in real life, maybe not living up to their entire standards there, I guess. I don't know. That's just kind of how I see it. Yeah, so hey Chris, hi Susan. Good to hear from you both. Having a good time here. So at any rate, just making an observation there. But this is pretty astonishing. So these people are showing up. You know what's actually happening here? They're very, very unhappy that their paychecks got taken away. That's actually what's going on here. We have discovered now that USAID was a multi-tens of billions of dollars grift, influence peddling, and unbelievable assortment of just buying influence and winning friends and people. But a lot of these folks here, I got to confess, some of them have been at this government job for so long, they don't actually have other skills out there. So this could be I could understand being very, very angry, very upset if my livelihood was about to be completely taken away. That's what's actually really on the table for a lot of these folks. But deport Musk. So, okay, very clever. And again, see if you notice this too, as time goes on, that there's a very big difference between Democrats when they want to virtue signal and campaign and all of that, and when they're actually out there in real life doing what they do. Okay. So, let me skip forward, see if I have that here just a second. No. Okay. So hold on 1 second. I got to find this one thing because I put this a little bit out of order. Let's skip that for now. Give me 1 second. Let's just skip ahead to, yeah, we'll start here. Yeah. All right. USAID. Sorry for that. I had my slides out of order. It happens. By the way, I produce research and and present the whole thing. So this is crazy. So here's the kind of stuff that USAID was doing. If you felt like you were in some Truman Show simulacrum of reality where you're like, what is happening? It's because there were billions and billions of dollars being your money, my money, if you're an American taxpayer, being just wasted to reinforce narratives. And here's one of them. This was astonishing to me to find this out.
USAID sponsored American celebrity visits to Ukraine after Russia's full-scale invasion.
Oh, remember all those celebrities, and they were just showing up and they all just couldn't wait to go to Ukraine to shake Zelensky's hand. Let's find out if there was another motivation besides solidarity, Slava Ukraini, with the big enterprise going on. Let's see.
Angelina Jolie, $20 million.
Whoa. $20 million to fly Angelina Jolie over there for a photo op? I'm going to say that wasn't the best use of taxpayer funds. Just saying.
Sean Penn, $5 million. Jean-Claude Van Damme, $1.5 million. Orlando Bloom, $8 million. Ben Stiller, $4 million.
Oh, they totally got ripped off on that one. I bet they could have got him for like $4,000. Maybe he should have paid for the opportunity. PR.
This was done to increase Zelensky's popularity among foreign audiences, particularly in the United States.
So, if you were one of those people who was watching Angelina Jolie or Sean Penn or Ben Stiller or whatever, and you're like, man, I kind of like Zelensky now because look, some of my favorite people like him. You got played. This is gross. This is really absolute. Yeah. Bring a Timmy Rob B. Tell us. I agree. It's really gross. Really gross. Okay. I can't watch any more of that. So what do we make it? So they're paying to shape the opinions of people. And let me go here because, man, I really got these out of order. What did I do with this? Because it wasn't just that they were paying for. It was worse than that. USAID was also funneling money to run propaganda inside the United States, well beyond any of that stuff that we just saw there. So let's talk about this scandal because apparently this is where my brain wants to go. So let's go there. It turns out USAID gave $4 billion to Pfizer, number 2 on the list. Pfizer, who got $80 billion in profits from having the mandated shot, which we're going to find out was also maybe should not have been mandated because, of course, they didn't have any data. Now that we're going to get the data, because I hope RFK Jr. is going to get confirmed, we're going to see the data. And we're going to find out that 80 billion, Pfizer didn't need another 4 billion. This is just how this works. So the whole thing, Pfizer was part of this grifty scam. USAID got these tens of billions of dollars and then they doled them out and they gave them to various cutouts. And it's going to take a while to unravel this because, of course, they wouldn't just cut a check to like Scoundrel A. They would cut a check to an NGO who would give a portion of that to NGO number 2, who would then cut a check to Scoundrel B, right? That's how it works. So they think they can hide in all of this, EIN number over here, NGO over there, here a check, there a check, everywhere a check. They think they can hide in all of that. Their biggest fear is somebody like Elon Musk coming in because he's got a team of software engineers, really good ones. And it's going to take AI to sort of parse through this fraud in real time. It would take thousands of forensic auditors to pour through this spaghetti mess of corruption. But it'll probably take AI an afternoon, right? So this is what they're afraid of. And of course, they are very, very deeply afraid, as they should be, because look at this. 97% of all political contributions from USAID employees went to Democrat candidates, according to Daily Wire. Think of the odds, right? That just says 97% of all USAID employees know which side of the bread is buttered. This is what the game was. This is a deep, deep scandal. This is the biggest scandal in my lifetime. This makes Watergate look like a walk in the park. This is graft, influence peddling, and corruption. and I had to pay for it. That's the infuriating part, right? I have a government that takes upwards of 50% of all revenues. Once you add it all in, right? Top marginal tax rate of 39%, but then you also have to pay, well, you got to pay taxes on the gasoline you use, and there's road fees. And then there's taxes on my phone bill for some reason. And then there's further taxes on my electrical bill. There's also taxes on my plane. There's all those plane fees, taxes on taxes on taxes on taxes, right? At any rate, they take 30 to 50% of the entire output of the United States by hook or by crook, right? And they're still 37 trillion in debt and heading down the shitter. So at any rate, that was the whole scam. It was just a giant scam, and it was just a fleecing operation. As George Washington, I believe, said, the last official act of any government is to loot the treasury. Now, that was back when gold and silver were in your treasury. Now, how do you loot the treasury? Well, you just run scams on your taxpayers. You make the people out there work to the bone, barely scraping by. If you're in Canada, the scam is 60% of Canadian households are living paycheck to paycheck. They are insolvent. And yet they're now mad at Trump because their TV programs told them to be mad at Trump about all of this. Trump didn't make Canadians poor. Canadians, y'all made yourselves poor because you kept electing scoundrels just like we did. So we all have the same problem. And if I was Canadian, I'd be looking on this with some measure of jealousy saying, wow, sure hope we could get some of that, to come up and over here. I sure wish somebody would look into this for us a little bit up here. And Rob B says the whole system created and it's just written fiction believed into existence. Absolutely. It was crazy. Absolutely crazy. Taylor Knox saying, as the dictatorship grows in power, high food prices, gas prices, and interest rates have all fallen. Amazing. Well, you ain't seen nothing yet. I am very worried that there is a gigantic economic financial crisis coming because this whole thing was a big tinderbox of, well, it's corruption. And we've all known something. So if you hang out with economists and people, financial types, financiers, if you hang out with them and you show them a chart of the total indebtedness of the United States, and I mean the IOUs too, not just the federal debt, we talk about the 37 trillion, but the United States in total has 100 trillion of debt. But when you add on underfunded liabilities, the actual number 200, 300 trillion, nobody knows. It's unpayable. Everybody knows it's a game of musical chairs. What I'm worried about is when you expose the corruption like this, it's possible that everybody suddenly knows that everybody knows. That's the common knowledge game. Everybody knows when everybody knows. That's common knowledge. Everybody knows when everybody knows that our whole financial system is insolvent. Well, then you have a race to the few remaining chairs that are out there. That's my concern. I'll talk about that more back at Peak Prosperity. So come on by if you want to, carry on that conversation. But let's continue this story for now. Guess which outlet the Biden campaign and Intel officials solicited the laptop letter story to? Remember, there were those 51 intelligence officials who signed a letter saying that the laptop had all the hallmarks of Russian disinformation, all of whom have now had their security clearances revoked. I'm very happy about that. All of whom are now forbidden from entering federal buildings. Well, I'm not sure if all of them, but I know for sure John Brennan and a couple other top raccoons are now forbidden. So their livelihood's been cut off. That's what you have to do. But guess who it was? Oh, it was Politico. Politico. Yeah, Jen Psaki writing at the time, Hunter Biden's story is Russian disinfo. Dozens of former Intel officials say, and that's from Politico.com. So here's the story. It goes to here. Turns out that Politico and the New York Times were propped up by millions of dollars from the federal government being funneled through USAID. And isn't it interesting that on Tuesday, staffers at Politico were notified that a technical error, which is the best kind of error, had prevented paychecks from going out. Many joked, laughing nervously, that this had something to do with the Trump administration putting a freeze on USAID funding. That would be weird. Maybe not, because it turns out that the Politico pain game here, they oh my God, the pain gain here, $8.2 million. Beginning in 2020, I mean, you can see there, they got nothing through 2019. There's 2020, right? That's the beginning of Biden's disastrous administration, and they just got paid more and more and more. So you and I were paying for the pleasure of having propaganda and disinfo shoved down our throats. This is wrong. It's morally wrong. It's technically wrong. It's legally wrong. It's wrong on all sorts of levels. And of course, that brings us back to all those angry, mostly white people. Elon must be deported. They're all angry outside of USAID because this just got cut off. This just got cut. They just put a wooden stake in this whole thing right here. But this is astonishing, is it not? And this is just one example. So to me, Politico is just a fractal meaning a little thing that represents and repeats across the larger whole. You could go to Politico, we could go to the Pfizer piece. Every single thing you unravel from USAID, you're going to discover, and that's what a 97% donation rate to Democratic candidates means. This was a giant machine of graft and corruption. I would be willing to bet that if you went to the headwaters of that graft and corruption, you'd find two people named Bill and Hillary. Something seriously went off the rails with those two. I think you know how it is. They say one bad apple spoils a whole bunch. I'm not blaming it all on them, but certainly we reached a critical mass of corruption under those two, under Bill's, starting with Bill in particular. And it just snowballed and got worse and worse and worse and worse. And here we are, right? And if somebody didn't fix this, the entire thing was going to just blow up someday anyway. We all knew that. I'm a much more of the rip the Band-Aid off kind of guy. I much would prefer, as unpleasant as it might be, to flick on the kitchen lights, see how many cockroaches we got, figure this out, eliminate all this wasteful spending. And by the way, that snake is going to bite back at some point in time. This is you do not mess with people's livelihoods without them really getting angry. And I don't just mean they astroturf their way to the front of the USAID building and show really poorly made signs and angrily yell that Elon should be deported and all of that. It's pretty bad. It gets worse. Okay. Chip Roy said, what if I told you? So get this. It turns out that awards and subawards identified 3 selected Chinese entities for the calendar years. Oh, there's that date again. You see that? 2014 to 2021. Turns out the National Institute of Health took all this taxpayer money and funneled it straight to Wuhan University, funneled it to EcoHealth Alliance, to the University of California at Irvine, to Duke University, to the regents of the University of California, who then sub-funneled it to first-tier sub-award recipients, which included the Wuhan Institute of Virology, which included the Academy of Military and Medical Sciences in China, which included EcoHealth Alliance, and then USAID, International Development. Tell you what we're going to do. We're going to funnel some money to our cutout, which is the University of California at Davis, and then they're going to funnel it to the EcoHealth Alliance, who's going to give it to Wuhan Institutes of Virology and University to make the coronavirus that they then used as a reason to lock us all down and jab stuff in our arms. This is what people should be protesting. Where are those Democrats and the rhinos on this? This is inarguably the largest insult that has happened to each of us. It ruined childhoods. People died as a result of this. People were wounded and injured. All of this was used to steamroll us. Trillions of people, however many PPP loans, billions and hundreds of billions went to raccoons. Some of them, I took 0 PPP loans. You know why? Because I didn't need them and it would have been wrong. And that's where my moral decision point lies. I could have taken a lot of money. Congress people took money. Hedge funds took money. Nigerians took money. I didn't, because it would have been out of integrity for me and I would have had to live with that. But anyway, billions, hundreds of billions. You could say I'm stupid for that. That's fine, maybe, but that's how I'm built. So, but this is this. Why? Where are they on this? Why wasn't RFK Jr. or Tulsi Gabbard asked one question by Democrats or rhinos? Hey, we just found out potentially that our country funded its own demise. How are you going to get to the bottom of that? How will you assure this doesn't happen again? Those would have been totally appropriate questions to ask and answer. Okay. So at any rate, I don't know. I don't know why it's like this, but we should be asking these questions. So hey, guess what? We're about to hear from my favorite sponsor. We're going to take a quick break. It's 2 minutes. Hello, I want to take just a quick break from this program here to tell you about, well, what I'm up to. This is the pond that's on the property that Evie and I own. And you know what we're doing here? We're getting ready for some hard times, we think, but we're also doing it in a positive and loving and open manner. And we're building soil and building abundance and doing all of that and growing food. Why are we doing that? Because if you're like us, you know that the world is going in a really not good direction. We understand that there are risks out there that are new, right? There could be a financial accident. We know there's a fiscal train wreck coming, probably a monetary train wreck coming to the United States and the world by extension. We know that there's the possibility now of a new world war. There's all kinds of risks out there. Nobody's talking about them. Well, we are at Peak Prosperity, so this is an invitation to come join our community. It's been running for about 15 years. I'm your information scout. Every day I wake up, I'm scouring the world, I condense it. My superpower is taking complex topics and presenting them back to people so they can, A, understand them, but B, take action on them. So I want to help you protect your wealth, build more wealth. I want to help you be more healthy by understanding that we have a toxic food system that's out there to get you addicted to toxic substances so that then the pharma sick care system can sell you cures for all that toxicity you just ingested. I want you to understand that this nature, really important for your child's development, your grandchildren, for your own. It's time to reconnect with the things that are important. That's what the Peak Prosperity community is. So you're invited to join. A lot of entrepreneurs there, scientists, doctors, lawyers, architects, you name it. We've got people who've been successful at life because they're open-minded, they're curious, they're learners. And this is a time to learn. We'll give you a 30-day money-back guarantee, no questions asked, because we want to make sure that we're a good fit for you and you're a good fit for us. Consider joining Peak Prosperity. That's it for now. Thanks. We'll get back to our programming, and I hope to see you at the website soon. All right, welcome back. I love hearing from that guy. He's great. You should follow him. All right. This was amazing. So we're going to turn now very quickly to the core of the problem that we're really facing here, which is the absolutely deep division that exists in this country. And there's no better illustration of this, I think, than to look at this is the roll call vote out of the Senate Finance Committee around RFK Jr., right? So if it comes out of, I don't know why finance, but anyway, I don't understand the politics. But anyway, it goes into this committee. There's 14 Republicans, 13 Democrats, and they all vote on RFK Jr. See if you can notice the voting pattern here real quick.
Support the nomination of the Honorable Robert F. Kennedy Jr. of California to be Secretary of Health and Human Services. Is there a second? Second. There is a second. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Grassley.
Aye.
Mr. Grassley, aye. Mr. Cornyn.
Aye.
Mr. Cornyn, aye. Mr. Thune.
Aye.
Mr. Thune, aye. Mr. Scott.
Aye.
Mr. Scott, aye. Mr. Cassidy.
Aye.
Mr. Cassidy, aye. Mr. Langford.
Aye.
Mr. Langford, aye. Mr. Daines.
Aye.
Mr. Daines, aye. Mr. Young. Mr. Young, aye. Mr. Barrasso. Mr. Barrasso, aye. Mr. Johnson. Mr. Johnson, aye. Mr. Tillis. Mr. Tillis, aye. Mrs. Blackburn. Mrs. Blackburn, aye. Mr. Marshall. Mr. Marshall, aye. Mr. Wyden.
No.
Mr.
Oh, there's a no. Ron Wyden. We're just getting into the Democrats now. I would invite you to look at their body postures. Just see what you see. See if you see what I see.
Wyden, no. Ms. Cantwell. No. Ms. Cantwell, no. Mr. Bennett. Mr. Bennett, no. Mr. Warner. Mr. Warner, no. Mr. Whitehouse. Mr. Whitehouse, no. Ms. Hassan. Ms. Hassan, no. Ms. Cortez Masto. Ms. Cortez Masto, no. Ms. Warren. No. Ms. Warren, no. Mr. Sanders. No. Mr. Sanders, no. Ms. Smith. No. Ms. Smith, no. Mr. Lujan.
No.
Mr. Lujan, no. Mr. Warnock.
No.
Mr. Warnock, no. Mr. Welch.
No.
Mr. Welch, no. Mr. Chairman. Chairman votes aye.
Well, there you have it. 100% of Democrats said no to RFK Jr. And of course, lots of fun has been made out of that with Bernie Sanders and Liz Warren attempting to say, parse it. I couldn't take any pharmaceutical CEO money on a Tuesday. I mean, it was oddly specific, right? Obviously, they took many, many millions of dollars out of the healthcare industry and business, and they are voting their pocketbooks here. But what they're also voting against is us being healthy. They're voting against looking into childhood illnesses, things like autism. Like, can we just get to the root of this? And they're saying, no, we'd be offended if we looked at any of this stuff. And, you're exactly right, Rob B. A Massachusetts Democrat, Pocahontas, should be ashamed. Absolutely. Who said no? Oh, I know this is hard to watch, but we have to. You gotta look at this. We've got to know what we're up against here. So, well, anyway, I tweeted that out and said, I will never forget that every single Democrat voted against the health of our children. They're either incorrigibly ignorant or corrupt. I said, there's no middle ground on this. None. I don't have any middle ground on this. There isn't. What's interesting is like the reactions under this. You can sort of see some of these bizarre reactions. Here's one from Denise McPherson saying, well, of course, with the Ukraine flag, which is international sign for you're about to read a stupid tweet, at least for me. We will remember every Republican voted for this when the SHT hits the fan. So, and I said, I know, right? People are going to be losing weight, preventable diseases like otitis media and asthma will be plummeting. It's amazing. National debt's going to go down. That's going to strike terror into some hearts, but not mine. Not mine, because I actually want a healthy, prosperous, and intelligent country. This is, the battle lines have been drawn. You can feel it now, right? It's pretty impressive what's just happened. Bob Herrick said, what a deranged, pathetic take. Of course, people want to be healthy. They simply don't want a conspiracy theorist, anti-vaccine brainworm nut job in charge of it. Congrats, you utter coward. And I said, hey, Bob, very classy of you. Of course, your ignorance is now on full display, and you clearly have no idea who Bobby really is or the depth he brings to the table. He's incredibly smart, deeply steeped in the root issues that plague us, and you are not. Time to sit this one out and let real adults be in charge for once. Now, here's the thing. These people like Bob wouldn't bother me as much if they didn't just say, he just said, basically said, Chris, you ignorant slut, right? That's fine. But he brings nothing to the table. These are literally programmed talking points that got inserted into Bob's brain through CNN or Rachel Maddow or something. We don't want a conspiracy theorist, anti-vaccine brainworm nut job, right? It's like, okay, that's fine. I get it. Some PR firm came up with these as potential attack vectors. They ran them through a focus group. They delivered them through Rachel Maddow, and now you're repeating them as if they are pearls of wisdom. But Bob, they're not pearls of wisdom. They actually display your absolute lack of depth in this subject. If you wanted to say, I think Bobby's wrong about the need to investigate vaccines further or more, because here are the 8 studies that I think are definitive and prove this, fine. If you say, Chris, I understand he thinks there's a connection between vaccines and autism. I don't, because here's all this emerging data that suggests why 1 in 32 kids are now slated to come down, be afflicted by autism if they're born today. Probably gets even worse if they're born today. If Bob came with anything except these vacuous, ignorant, libelous ad hominems, I would say, oh, okay, we could have a conversation, but I don't know how to have there's no way to have a conversation with Bob, right? Or Denise, or thousands and thousands of other people, maybe some of them. How do you have a conversation with somebody who it's like, remember, I talked about this in yesterday's Signal Hour, which was a special edition on stochastic terrorism. I'm going to touch on that again real quickly here. But let's imagine that you're trying to have a conversation with somebody and you say something like, they're like, oh, well, I want to vote for Kamala because she just has better policies. And you say, okay, which ones? And then they just shut down because they literally can't name one, right? It's like all these people on Reddit and on Blue Sky who are absolutely livid that USAID is under attack. Last week, they didn't know what it was. And even today, they can't tell you which specific programs. They're so like the world's going to end if we don't supply condoms to Ugandans, with lube, right? They won't be able to tell you which program exactly they're so upset about because it's not an actual reasoned point of view. Now, here's how I look at this. If you debate somebody who's holding an opinion, they can still be passionate about that, right? They might decide they know which is the best baseball pitcher and they have ERAs and stats and all these things, or they might be telling you which form of energy they think is the best. And here's, the EROEIs and some detailed analysis. That's fine. Get passionate. They can even get heated, but if it's an opinion, it's based on a mountain of facts that you have that can always be added to and amended. Fine. When you're talking with somebody who has a belief system that's been installed and they don't know where it came from, those are guarded with emotional outbursts like this, right? That's what they look like. Like, here's how it goes. So the New York guy thought he gave me a gotcha. He's like, well, what about polio? And I was like, well, what about it? You know? And I put up this chart of, let me get my laser thing out here. You see, we had this huge spike here. This is when you saw all those things, pictures of people in iron lungs and all of that. It's because we had no polio outbreaks until here. You know what that was? That correlates highly with our first adventurous misuse of organophosphate pesticides, which you can track the progression of polio across the country, and it follows the growing season and it follows the application of these pesticides that ended up creating a leaky boundary between the spinal cord and the rest of the body because they attacked that part of it. And it allowed a virus that's a problem, but not a pandemic problem, easy access into the central nervous system. This is just data. It's decades old. We understand the arc of this story now. What about polio? And I said, well, what about it? He's like, this chart clearly shows polio vaccine as being effective. What he doesn't realize is the polio vaccine came in here where my red dot is. It didn't have anything to do with either the outbreak or the recovery from the outbreak. But they argue forcefully, but these people never have context. They just don't have the context. They're arguing, but they have no context. It's like Liz Warren saying, Bobby Kennedy's going to harm our children. It's like, okay, how? And she would just give you that blank stare that happens when somebody has a forceful point of view and they got nothing to back it up. Now, these are the people who hold those forceful points of view, like Bob, who think they know what's going on. They think they're in the right. They think they're the smart ones. They condescend and look down on deplorables, right? All those people who actually come and fix their HVAC when it needs fixing and make sure their driveway gets resealed and do the actual work. But they look down and they're very condescending because they think they have the context. They think they know what's going on. They think this is settled science. This person, I guarantee you, New York guy has zero clue about what I'm talking about because he hasn't read about it. He isn't curious, but he's got a forceful point of view. Okay. All right. Well, at any rate, yeah. So thank you for this, Captain Z. It's like trying to argue about cats with someone who really believes mine are sucking my breath out at night. Telling them that's just an old wives' tale doesn't change them. But Captain Z, they will forcefully argue, well, what about your cats? It's just crazy, you know, but it's also mental illness. And so that brings us to this last part of the report today, and it's going to take a while. Yesterday I talked about stochastic terrorism threat. So very quickly to cover that ground again, stochastic terrorism is a very fancy term, and it doesn't have to be this fancy. Stochastic meaning random or, part of random chance, and terrorism. Anyway, we could rename it. We could call this the don't yell fire in a crowded movie theater philosophy. But anyway, it's a form of political violence. It's instigated by hostile public rhetoric directed at a group or an individual. Unlike an incitement to terrorism, stochastic terrorism is accomplished with indirect or vague or coded language, which grants the instigator plausible deniability for any associated violence. Okay. And they use social media for this stuff. That's on Wiki. And what we see here, take my picture out of here real quick. You can read some of these. There's a new subreddit over on Reddit called r/50501. I think they're planning some big protests, but they're all talking violence here. Look at all this violence. Luigi, of course, referring to the Luigi who shot the United Healthcare CEO in New York a while back. We need more Luigis to kickstart this revolution. They're saying they'd rather die. They don't feel any empathy for these people. They're traitors. So they're pretty unhappy about this grifty, grafty show being undone. And as I pointed out yesterday, it's kind of bizarre that we could have this many people allegedly jumping straight from, I didn't know anything about USAID, AID, to immediately to, well, we're going to have to kill somebody. There's no intervening like awareness and growing resentment, maybe leading to contempt that ultimately becomes kind of a little bit hostile to this. We cannot fire the first shot, but we must fire the last. whatever. I mean, so they're very aggrieved. And the question is, well, how did this happen? The point of the stochastic terrorism that I want to make is that not all of these are people. Some of these are bots. They're going to be run by pharma companies. They're going to be run by military industrial contractors. They're going to be run by NGO cutouts. They're going to be run by companies that have been under contract from USAID, probably, or other forms of the government. And they may even be run out of US government agencies directly. Okay. If you gave me $1 billion and said, hey, make up an AI program that would fracture the country, I could do it for $1 billion. I'd get 100 of the best software engineers and we'd be starting to parse through everything we know about how you nudge people and the right cadence of things. And you go on Facebook and you fracture out, you siphon all the data out and fraction everybody up and you put people in their little influence bubbles. And then you start trying to ring fence them and you pen them in and you feed some people echo chambers of very, very specialized memes and thought patterns. You find out what's working in real time, not real time, but silico real time, super fast. You have your AI model learn on itself and you figure out how to get people emotionally overwrought, aggrieved, and so deeply racked in the brain around an issue that they break and they can't recover. And as a consequence, violence happens. I could do that for $1 billion and I'd do it for a great job. I guarantee you, tens of billions have already been arrayed against this project. This is how the color revolutions get started in other countries. This is what it looks like when it comes to your country. This is somebody trying to foment a color revolution. Why? Probably to cover their asses. This is somebody trying to whoop things up, to create trouble so that civil war breaks out or violence breaks out or something breaks out that will allow them to get out of the spotlight for a minute, regroup, and then come charging forward and say, see, look at these things that Trump did. Trump made all this violence happen. This isn't Trump. Trump isn't doing this. Some of these are real people, and they're just useful idiots in this story. And by the way, if you wake up someday and find out you're one of these useful idiots, how embarrassing. Awkward. But this is not Trump doing this. This is other people. I submit to you, we should find out who they are, and they should be charged to the fullest extent of the law. And if the law doesn't have a full enough extent, let's pass some new laws, because this is attempting to break the country. Whoever is doing this is harming the nation. And we have laws against that, right? So look at this. Reddit is advocating extreme violence all the time. They're doxing the Doge software engineers, who we're going to need, by the way. There's no way that you could possibly begin to forensically figure out with accountants what's going on. You're going to need software engineers with the best AI programming, probably using neural net models to look for pattern recognition and to begin to untangle this horribly complicated situation that's morphed and metastasized over these many decades. But here they are, r/Democrats on Reddit saying, well, if this is a crime, lock me up, and here they are giving the names of the Doge software engineers. Now that's stochastic terrorism, right? You use incitement to terrorism as indirect or vague or coded language. I didn't say anything bad should happen to these people. I was just giving you their names, and I can show you other places on Blue Sky. You want to find their names and their home addresses? It's everywhere, posted everywhere. Stephen King on Blue Sky, all like mad in his Democrat way. And all of a sudden, you see, I saw counted 10 instances under one of his posts where they just, some random people, but probably stochastic terrorism bots run by NGO cutouts who work for or got paid by USAID. That's the model. This is horrifyingly bad because you know what? Real people, their outlooks get damaged by this, and real people are harmed. And this could lead to real violence. But that's what they want. I just got to be very clear about this, okay? This is what they want. Now, it turns out I posted in yesterday, but I got an update now. Ed Martin, a United States attorney out of D.C., says, quote, our initial review of the evidence presented to us indicates that certain individuals and or groups have committed acts that appear to violate the law in targeting Doge employees. Okay, we are in contact with the FBI and other law enforcement partners to proceed rapidly. We also have our prosecutors preparing. Now, Ed, or anybody else listening to this needs to know this. be prepared that if you run into a dead end, that these accounts seem to be sock puppet accounts, that they go somewhere you don't understand, it's not a real person with a door you can knock on, then you have to go deeper, because the people's doors you're knocking on almost invariably are going to be the useful idiots in this story. They feel like they're in the right because they're over on our Democrats and they're like, yeah, we're doxing these people. And it looks like everybody agrees with them because there's all these, yeah, you go, girl. You're so powerful. Yeah. But what if those are bots? Yeah, they're nudging. They're pushing. Just like we had the bots that were out there nudging and the nudge units were pushing us to say, oh, you wouldn't want to kill grandma, would you? Psychological operations are effective. And under Obama in 2016, he released the hounds, pulled the law down that prevented the military from applying propaganda back on its own citizens. Okay. Well, it's only gotten worse and worse and worse since then. And maybe we have to have a comeuppance and maybe we should re-examine that law. I submit to you that running hostile propaganda on your own citizens should be punishable by death. Public death. Maybe it's time to bring back the public hangings, right? The literal ones. Because I don't know how you stop this except you let people know who are doing it. It's really not okay. And it should be obvious, right? Immorally, it's just obviously wrong that you would use powerful tools to mess with people's minds to the point that they commit violent acts that then derail them on a moral, social, criminal level for the rest of their lives. That would be wrong, but that's just how I'm built. Was that the Smith Modernization Act? I guess it could be, Rob B. Yep. That was a piece of, should look at that one too. This one, here we go. Cisco Terrace says weak-minded people with a lack of critical thinking ability are easily swayed into hostility or aggression. Now let me modify that, because actually, Cisco, what I have found is that the people who are most susceptible to this are actually fairly intelligent. I'll bet you in many of them are highly educated. So I would bet you that Bob Herrig falls into that camp and people like him, right? Went to some of the best schools, had all the advantages you could possibly hope for in life, had a fairly easy life overall, and they were the ones who are easiest to break in this. In fact, if you looked at the people who are least likely to fall victim to the mind control, the fifth generation warfare, the nudge units, the propagandizing around COVID, it was actually the so-called deplorable crowd. These are the people who tended to show up at Trump rallies. These weren't the people who showed up at the DNC rallies. You will find that, the laptop class really fell victim to this stuff very easily. So I'm not sure what weak-minded means in that context, but I would go with the idea that the people who do fall for these things are not as robustly intelligent as they imagine they are. Let's put it that way. So how about this? I have a proposal then. Here we see another subreddit over here. Elon Musk belongs in prison. He belongs somewhere apart from his head, which should be in a basket. They like the guillotine motif for some reason. I don't know why. So here's a proposal. Remember, let's just terminate Reddit, maybe for the national good. Let's just say Reddit, for whatever reason, is either shot through with bots and or it has a moderating process that's unable to keep up with this, or it actually it's actively supporting a call towards violence. We might say, well, that's not okay, right? We don't like the KKK because they advocated for violence. Why should we like it because it's coming from Reddit? It's the same thing, right? Now, here's the part. One of the things that you learn when you're dealing with deeply narcissistic people, right? I've done a whole deep study on this, is that they invariably tell you about their own worst traits. It's called confession by projection. They project upon you the things that are their own worst things. So what do we know about the so-called progressives? What do we know about under the Biden administration? What are the things that they accused us of? You're a Nazi. What does that mean? Well, that would be a national socialist, right? Obviously, but I guess that to them shorthand that into totalitarian with a racist streak. Okay, they've just told me that they are totalitarians with a racist streak, which we should know because they said we judge people solely on the basis of their skin color. And that's how we fight racism. Like, it's okay. They're not logical. I get that. Right. They also told us that that some of the things they hated the most was misinformation and disinformation. They told us that straight up. They hated that stuff. I got fact checked, right? And I really hope, pro tip, if you're digging into the USAID, please look for Reuters, AP, Meta, PolitiFact, all those fact checkers. I'll bet you find some money there too. And I'm looking forward to that day. So confession by projection, back to the story. They've told us what they hate. Misinformation, disinformation. It turns out that they are the largest purveyors of misinformation and disinformation out there. And they've also told us the thing they would hate the most is if they actually got censored for spouting nonsense, because that's what they wanted to do to me and to you. All right. So if that's what they hate, then I would say, listen, this is one thing I've learned about dealing with deeply narcissistic people is you got to give them what they're asking for, good and hard, right? There's no negotiating. There's no getting a better argument out there. There's no being more reasonable and they finally come around. They're damaged. They're not built that way. Okay. So why not, if they wanted to just get rid of, they took down Parler, they took down all those YouTube videos. So listen, if it was okay for their team to take groups of self-organized vaccine-injured people who found each other on Facebook and were providing support and resources and anecdotes to each other, and they scattered them. They just took those groups and smashed them. If that was okay, because these people were sharing misinformation they found offensive, which was, oh yeah, I haven't felt right since the vaccine I took, that offended them to the point where they smashed and scattered those groups to the winds. Why wouldn't it be okay to just say, you know what? You guys are actually advocating violence against other human beings who have done nothing to you directly. We consider that unacceptable. If they could smash vaccine injury support groups apart because that offended them, why wouldn't we be in the right to say, okay, well, that's fine. That's how you play. We agree. We agree. We accept your terms. I think Reddit ought to be absolutely dismantled. And I think Blue Sky ought to be absolutely dismantled. They should be smashed. It's a very weird thing for me to say as a free speech advocate, but what's happening over there is not organic and it's not free speech. They are advocating overt violence, really gross violence, and someday they will succeed. So why let them do that? I don't, just a proposal. Let's debate. How about this? Liz Warren, just my senator, unfortunately, because I'm from Massachusetts, says Elon Musk is seizing power from the American people by not allowing Congress members to waste taxpayer money. It's true. Colin Rugg writing, I knew Trump's second presidency would be good, but I didn't realize it'd be this good. Me neither. It surprised me to the upside. Warren launched new conspiracy theories, including one that Elon Musk would be stopping Social Security checks to old people. What? You want to talk about like wackadoodle, like just making stuff up? There it is. Here's the thing. You would think that Liz is one of the card-carrying members of the Democratic Party, that she would be able to look at a chart like this, a table like this, and go, we might be on the wrong path. Right? Hans, are we the baddies? She should be asking herself some soul-searching sorts of questions about now, and she's not, right? So just not getting the memo. This is bad. Unfavorable 57% is a bad rating. Very bad. And by the way, 30% of the people are subject to menticiding and all that. Aesthetica wrote here that the Democratic Party is apparently said they're in a panic. In a total panic. And it's unlike anything this gentleman's ever seen. By following the money, Doge has struck a killing blow to the heart of the Democrat deep state machine. And this is causing a lot of panic. Direct quote, this is worse than 9/11 for the Democrats. USAID is the primary vessel they use to achieve their political agenda. USAID is and always has been the primary source of funding for their influence peddling schemes and for their indirect sources of income. Yeah. Well, I'm glad for the panic. And by the way, JBuggy21 writing here, Republicans will take your Social Security has been a favorite canard since before I started voting in the 1980s. Yeah, Liz suddenly cares about old people. Right. She doesn't care about kids, and autism, and she doesn't care about kids and hyperactivity and kids and chronic illnesses and type 2 diabetes and metabolic disorders. She doesn't care that we have the lowest life expectancy of any industrialized nation. She doesn't care about any of that. She suddenly cares that old people's security checks might be taken away. It's just so transparently vapid and it's just awful. Just awful. Awful. So how about Ron Wyden, one of the people voting no on that Senate Finance Committee, saying he will pull out all the stops to hinder RFK Jr.'s nomination process as much as he can. Now, why? Why would Ron Wyden, why are the Democrats suddenly so vehemently opposed to RFK Jr., who, by the way, I've worked very closely. I work with groups that very close in this whole health space. Okay. It's been a big thing of mine. And in every instance that I'm aware of, anything Bobby has ever said that I've been able to, or anybody else has fact checked, has turned out to be true, right? They can twist it around. They're like, oh, Bobby, you said that COVID was bioengineered to spare Jews. He's like, no, I didn't. I said there's an NIH paper that shows that there are racial differences because different races express a different motif of the ACE2 receptor. And because of that, there's a higher or lower binding affinity. And so therefore, certain races are more predisposed to have a worse case of COVID than other ones. It's just science, right? Race-based genetic science in medicine has been a thing for forever. You know that certain races have different genetic predispositions, right? We've always known that. You express different enzymes, different proteins, right? You know, Oriental people have a very different alcohol dehydrogenase capabilities. Some people do not have the lactase enzyme and you're lactose intolerant, and that's a racial thing. It has nothing to do with Jews or blacks or anything like that. It's how medicine is. It's like one of these moments you're like, we've known this for like decades now. How are we arguing? Like the level of ignorance is astonishing on all this. So RFK Jr. is just simply promising that he wants to bring more science into the conversations. Okay. I would have thought that what that led to was that whether you're blue or red, that using science to guide health, I would have thought that we would have had some overlap in those Venn diagrams. Like, you know, this is what I would have expected from a Ron Wyden or a Liz Warren. I would have expected them to say, look, Bobby, I don't agree with you on everything, but I think we can all agree that we would want to use science to the extent possible that we can to assure that we are having the best health outcomes for ourselves and our children. Tell me why you think our current approach is wrong and how you would go about addressing that. And because I want to understand who we're dealing with here. And he would have gone on. They didn't do that. They just attacked. So it turns out I discovered that we don't have any overlap in our Venn diagrams anymore at all. Like protecting our children's health. Like I'm all about it. There's people that they're not about that at all. They don't care. I'm like, how is that not a thing? Well, apparently it is not a thing. I don't want to waste taxpayer money. I kind of care about that. I would love to unite the country, not divide it. But there are people who are just running those bot farms to try and divide, if not violently divide our country. You have that happening. I don't want to foment division and hatred, right? But that was everything under Biden was just division and hatred. It was just the worst smash and grab, disaster capitalism, but I call it disaster politicization model. It was awful, right? And I think that, shock of all shocks, I think having an actual moral foundation to your decision-making is important. And other people are like, that's a hindrance. So our Venn diagrams don't overlap anymore, right? I don't understand. What do you do when your Venn diagrams don't overlap anymore? When you don't have shared territory, because shared territory is the beginning of all negotiations. That's where you start the process. If you ever get in a big, giant argument, you find out where you have some areas of commonality and you start there and you begin working outwards. I'm worried that we don't have an overlap anymore. I just don't have any overlap with a guy like this who has just decided that he just doesn't want science to be part. He doesn't want this. He doesn't want this. He does not want to use science to guide our public health. He likes it the way it is. The fattest, most unhealthy, shortest lived people out of any developed nation. And Ron Wyden says, you know what? I'm going to make it my life's mission. I'm going to pull out all the stops. I'm going to not go. I like it this way. I don't want any change in this model. Okay, Bucky, that means you don't have a moral foundation that you're working with, or if you do, it's just very different from mine. Yeah. So is a Venn diagram when there's no intersection? I don't know. I don't know. But this is how I see it right now. Now, this is important because what we're talking about here, let me throw it right on the table. We're talking about civil war, obviously, right? So I'm worried that we have a relationship that cannot be recovered, that the relationship is over. And sometimes you have to call an audible on a relationship. I'm a divorced man. I know what it's like when a relationship has run its course. I get it. According to the Gottman method, and if anybody's been through relationship couple therapy, all that, you go to Gottman, the Gottman therapist, they understand that there are 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, 4 horsemen of a relationship apocalypse. And those are, if you have these 4 things in your relationship, it's dead, right? Criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. But out of these, as soon as contempt comes in, that's irrecoverable. All the rest you can work with and modify, but once you have contempt for your partner, it's over. Just get the lawyers spooled up, work it out. I'm worried that we've gotten to the level of contempt. And this is personal. I'll speak for myself. I have contempt for the position of Ron Wyden and Liz Warren and all the rhinos who are dead set against doing anything to help actually fix the health of our nation. I have contempt for people who just want fleecing the taxpayers and running grifty, corrupt things. I have contempt for them. I have contempt for people who go out and foment wars in other countries so other people can die so they can make a few bucks off of it. I have contempt for that. And they have contempt for me. I don't know what we do about that, right? Because, if you want to get past this, what is criticism? It's verbally attacking the personality or character of the person you're in relationship with. Contempt is attacking the sense of self with an intent to insult or psychologically abuse. Contempt is when your nose wrinkles and your upper lip curls up like, ugh. Defensiveness is seeing yourself as the victim in efforts to ward off a perceived attack and then reverse the blame. Darvo. That's defend, attack, and reverse the victim orientation. Darvo. So I see these things happen. I see the stonewalling, which is withdrawing as a way to avoid conflict in efforts to convey disapproval, distance, separation, right? All of these things are in play now between what we're going to call the left and the right. But honestly, we're seeing a brand new thing break out now, which is not left-right anymore. It's up-down. And that's the thing I'm excited to emerge about. And both the Democrats and the rhinos, it's a false dichotomy. There is no left and right. I mean, these people yell angrily at each other for public, and then they go hang out at the same clubs and shake hands because it's just theater, right? I get that. It's just theater. But the people who have been destroying and damaging this country have had a free hand for a long time. And now somebody said, stop, we're going to just take a look at what you're doing. And they're throwing an absolute hissy fit. Just off the chart. Like, it's just unbelievable. But if you deal with damaged people, narcissists, that when you tell them to stop hurting you, they perceive that legitimately. They perceive that as an attack, right? Stop hitting me. Oh my God, I can't believe you attacked me like that. It's a bizarre thing, but it's kind of how they're built once you learn it. So I'm watching this all play out. I don't know how we come back from it. I'm worried that the relationship is over. I'm worried that we have no Venn diagram overlaps that we can deal with. And in that cauldron of contempt, we have somebody or some bodies throwing out that stochastic terrorism and trying to incite violence. So it's against this backdrop of understanding the degree to which we have a fractured, broken relationship, and somebody's coming in, insulting that wound and throwing out little violent bon mots in hopes of getting something kicked off. Those people deserve the highest form of penalty that we can muster as a nation. No question about it. By the way, there's a couple of quick things to close this out. We have the CIA offered a buyout to the entire workforce with that same option, like 8 months pay. I never thought we'd be here. Really? Okay. I'm all for that because I just don't believe that the CIA has been doing good things for my country since JFK. Let's just put it that way. And oh no, according to McCabe, former FBI director, he says people at the FBI are living in terror because their pensions, healthcare, and retirement are at risk. Oh, really? Oh, really? You know, I don't even have a violin small enough to break out for those FBI agents who maybe participated in all of the people that they arrested, harassed, and terrorized. Americans, right? In service to this political ideology, doing the work of whatever these wokesters were up to. It was wrong. It was immoral. They should have known that. And now it's going to be real hard to get me to whoop up a whole lot of sympathy for that, the terror that they're feeling at this point in time. They should not have done what they had done. That's pretty obvious. Okay. So at any rate, that's where we are for today. Thank you very much for being at this Signal Hour. That's all I got for now. We're at the top of the hour, so we're going to call this an audible on this one. Hope you got a lot out of it. Remember, come to peakprosperity.com. We're going to be carrying on this conversation over there with my subscribers and other people, and I've got so much more to talk about. In particular, I don't know how we avoid an economic hit to all of this, and it's because we're going to be cutting spending, wasteful spending. That's just a shave right off of GDP. You got that. You got all the people at USAID who are out of work, but then there are the people who there's salary supported. There's spillover effects off of that. But more importantly, the country has been running as if it was never going to have to pay the piper. And of course, we were going to have to. And that awareness is going to catch up with us quick. So please come on by peakprosperity.com. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next Wednesday at 1 o'clock, unless I hold another special Signal Hour, which I may have to do because this is going fast and furious right now. Thanks for being here, everyone. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.